Welcome to The First Turn. I'm your host, Hyena, and today, Llama and I are talking about This Week in Warhammer. If you like what you hear, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share, or let us know if there's something you'd like to hear us talk about. Alright, let's get to it.
There was a non-eventful Warhammer 40k meta watch where they elected to tell us we don't have data yet because the Dataslate, the balanced Dataslate just came out, and we don't have tournaments based on that yet.
Now, what was interesting is they did say that shortly after the Dataslate, some of the factions that weren't winning enough are doing okay in the last couple of weeks. A couple of other ones are coming down, so it's like...
They noted Eldari.
The idea is that perhaps it is trending the way they want to. It's too short to notice, but...
we got a great big fat event coming up that's going to show us.
Yeah, for sure. 4 weeks to go till Adepticon.
It's coming fast.
It's very fast.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to have a friend of the pod on today.
Mm-hmm.
Pivoting our plans for today. We were going to have an interview today with Dracoya.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, she is experiencing housing issues. Some kind of flood, some kind of
technical difficulties.
And so, unfortunately, we're going to have to probably push that off till next week.
Yeah.
I know I alluded to it last week about her being on, but yeah, things happen, Yep. So next week will probably be the day for that, so look out for it. She sadly, I don't think is going to be able to make it to Adepticon this year.
No.
So, bummer.
Yeah.
I'm still going.
I'm still going.
We're still going.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're interested in seeing us there, we'll be there.
We'll be there.
But other things we've got are pretty much hobby-related stuff, I would say. So there's not much for like rules and models coming out in this last week from Games Workshop. We had some notes about a new series coming out from Warhammer Plus about knights, which I think is super cool because lore-wise, I think knights are some of the most boring things.
Okay.
Personally,
yeah. They're like independent human planets,
right? And they're just kind of like, we'll fight. I think the idea behind Knight Houses is it was supposed to kind of be like BattleTech.
Right.
Yeah, in that, I don't know if you know much about BattleTech, but but a lot of the houses in BattleTech had like independent goals that would align with the systems on the whole.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they'd make their own decisions, their own plans, they'd have royalty and successions of leaders and alliances with other factions and stuff. And so actually, I've been playing the Rogue Trader game, ARPG. It's not an action RPG. TRPG, traditional RPG. There you go. From Alcat, they made a couple of the Pathfinder games, and they kind of allude to the minor factions in that game that are loosely, if not like officially, allied with the Imperium.
Mm-hmm.
So like Rogue Traders are agents of the Imperium, but they're given a lot of leeway to do what they want to do, similar to like Inquisitors. They kind of like have their own agendas and they do their own things and they control their own planets and they're given the official go ahead to do so by the Imperium.
It's like the runners and bounty hunters and stuff like that in Star Wars out in the fringe stars. Yeah. So,
but their empires of like the Rogue Traders are large, and sometimes the Knight Houses can be the same way, but they've got multiple Forge worlds, and they've got multiple systems that they sort of control and govern, and they ally with certain chapters of Space Marines or certain sects of the
Titanicus,
all that kind of stuff. And so, I'm interested to see where this new show goes. If it's more than just knights fighting, Because that's cool too, but
so my personal opinion is that Warhammer Plus has made really good content as far as their original shows go. They just don't give us enough of it.
Yeah. Well, because they're also really short episodes usually.
Yeah.
Like Exodite. Was it Exodite? I think it was. The one with the Tau and the Eldar fighting amongst the Titans. Super cool show. Only like 8 episodes and they were 8 minutes each. It's like, it's like that's not long enough. 12 minutes each, whatever. They were like super short episodes, and it was like you're telling a cool story. More, please.
Yeah.
Make these longer. Make these actual, show length. 24-minute episodes.
Yep.
I want to see more. The Angels of Death one, which with following the Blood Angels on the spoilers, I guess. Planet full of Gene Stealer cult.
Right.
Was a super cool one, but it was able to go 12 episodes, cut down to a full length, like 90-minute movie. Yeah. And so like even that's like, okay, well these are a little short too.
Well, Hammer and Bolter, they're about 15-minute episodes, and they haven't made one of those in a while.
Yeah, I'd love to see more of that because, I mean, they do a really good job of expanding, side lore. Yeah. I'd call it. Like the Age of Sigmar episodes were great. Yep. I loved those. And then the one we've seen too many times with the Space Wolf. Yeah. And the Tooth.
Yeah, because that was one of the first ones they showed. But then even characters I didn't have much interest in before, like Lucius the Eternal from the Emperor's Children, ended up a cool episode.
One of my favorite ones was about the Necrons and Abaddon's little like retinue of Terminators getting trapped in a time prism. Super cool. Who was that? Trazine? Trazine's little vault. Super cool. And like I said, there's books that you can listen to or read that expand the lore and stuff, but it's like having a lot of people subscribe to Warhammer Plus means there's an avenue to really get out like lore related stuff to people if they're willing to watch it. Yep. And it is in like little small bits, little bite-sized pieces. Little episodic. But like really expand on that. Really go further with that. I had seen sort of a theory that Warhammer Plus was basically just not a gimmick, but a tactic to show that the cinematic sort of side of 40k as a franchise was feasible. Right. And like it was a proof of concept for like Amazon to pick up.
Right. Because they've got a big contract with
major projects, that have budgets of hundreds of millions, potentially. And so like I'd like to be more optimistic about it than that, but that's kind of how it goes, right? Like a lot of times when you create a business, a more successful business doing a similar thing to you is like, hey, you're doing pretty good.
They buy them out.
You have some clients that we want to acquire. We'll buy you, and their offer is just more than you make in your entire company makes in a year. Like, here you go. So I wonder if it's that kind of thing where it's like, well, we want to pursue this as Games Workshop, but then a bigger, more enterprising entity comes by and says, we want to buy your IP or a part of your IP, whatever, and produce these things to make money off of it. It's like, okay, well, you can definitely do it better than us.
It was like Microsoft licensing Windows to other people to play with. Yeah. And so Games Workshop will still be Games Workshop, but now they can have a company like sort of Amazon cinematic side with infinite money making their projects. But on their digital content, we also got a big patch today for those who play Total War. Yep. Warhammer.
That was really exciting. There was a sort of call it a misstep.
A misstep for sure.
In the last DLC for Warhammer 3 Total War, where they released a somewhat expensive DLC patch with very minimal content. Yep. To the point where it's like, well, you're charging like, half of a game's cost, basically, for content that is supposed to make major impacts to the game, and even if it's just a couple factions, and there was just really just nothing that it introduced. And even the stuff it did introduce, it was kind of half-baked. There were, a new faction, a sub-faction that just didn't have its own mechanics even. Right. There was, new casters that didn't have their own lores of magic, which they always do. Right. Like, we're not talking about the 8 major lores, because there are more than that. The lore, what is the lore of vampires? It's its own thing. Yeah. So, like, these hags that were, part of this Kislev faction, didn't have a lore of hags. They had spells pulled from other lores in the hag spell lore tree. Yep. It's like, oh, that feels bad. They did that for, what was it, Zeech for a while. They did that for some of the vampires right before they had the actual one. There were some casters that had multiple lores in their wheelhouse that didn't get to pull whatever spells they wanted from both lores. Nope. They got an abridged tree. And some of the high elves did that with before they got like the high magic. I think they had like, well, you're both light and fire. We'll give you these 6 specific spells from those 2 lores that you can choose.
You actually end up weaker at both than being good at one.
And it was rough.
And it's so the average DLC, for those who don't know, they started this model in Warhammer 2, where every few months they'd release a relatively major update that added new factions to the game or updated an old faction, and you were paying in the neighborhood of the $10 to $17 but you usually got something pretty significant. The big ones, of course, being when you got a whole new faction like the Vampire Coast.
Yep.
4 new legendary lords, a whole new faction with totally different mechanics, or like the Tomb Kings were that way, to smaller ones where they just revamped an old faction, like when the Empire got their Elector Count system and the Dwarfs got the Forge system. Well, in 3, the price went up a little bit. They were in that $17 to $19 range, and they had kind of been impactful. Like when we got the Chaos Dwarf update, that was pretty significant. This, though, they jumped the price to $25 US, and it was like, well, this better be beefy.
Great.
And it was like, not.
Nope.
It was a very lesser, and so to their credit, they heard the fan outcry. They went back and said, okay, we're going to push back our next DLCs then. And this one, which was the Shadows of Change or whatever, they decided they're going to give us way more and not charge us any extra. So they went back to those 3 factions, Kislev, Tzeentch, and
Grand Cathay.
And they added way more content to all 3.
Yeah.
And then they also committed in writing to the fans from their developers that this model here with today's DLC is what the future DLCs are going to look like, with 3 factions at a time. You're going to get 3 lords, 3 heroes, X number of units. Like, you're going to get this much for the price, which that was good. Like, they tripped and then immediately recovered. So here's hoping. Haven't played it yet today. Downloaded it, but yeah.
I was Warhammer tangentially again was playing that other Rogue Trader game, and they had a massive patch this week too that basically revamped so much of the game and fixed so many bugs that it's like I gotta start over now. I was pretty far. I was near the end of Act 3, I believe, and there's 5 acts of the game, and it was like I've missed so much stuff because of bugs and these things. It's like, well, I want to go experience all that stuff again. I gotta start it over 70-hour playthrough over. Because I'm a thorough completionist when it comes to those games. I want to experience everything. I want to make it work with every single companion you get. No one gets left out. I make people get along. I romance everybody. I make it so that like every quest line for a companion is completed to the best of my ability. And so like I like to play completely like that. And the fact that they've fixed a bunch of stuff means it's like, well, crap, I need to. Well, yeah, I'm gonna have to start new campaigns for all 3 of these factions now because they got so many new units. It looks super cool. Big beasts for Kislev, which is interesting. So you have the new Frost Worm, which I don't think has wings. Is it not a flying dragon?
Right. So the funny thing is, for Norska, they also have a Frost Worm,
which is the flying one.
Which is a flying one.
Yeah.
I think this one's supposed to be tougher.
Well, this one looks like it's unnatural.
Yep.
Is the ice bear an elemental?
Yes.
Okay, so it's similar to that then.
Yep.
Gotcha. They're doing a new minor noble that will still be a legendary lord, I think, possibly. Drazina.
Oh no, that's a new lord that Kislev can recruit, and they did that because again, feeling incomplete when they did Ostankia, the hag lady, the only lord she could recruit in her faction at all were boyars, which didn't make sense because those were like nobles of the Kislevite cities,
right?
Where she's this, elemental hag witch cauldrons in the woods.
Did they come out with a new lord for her to recruit?
Yeah. So
this one is a named one, right?
No.
Oh no. Okay. This is a title.
Yeah.
Drazina.
And there's no hag lords other than her.
Okay.
Which I guess is lore friendly. This is one who kind of bridges that wild versus civilized. So new beast, new lord type. We had a new legendary hero that'll be joining Zarina. She's the Frost Queen in her faction. Similar to what's his name? The Barrow Knight. The vampire with the Chaos Lord turned white. What's his name? Black Axe. Well, Krell. Is the hero.
Yeah. So this one sounds like it's a very similar hero to Krell, or the paladin for what's her name in Bretonnia. There's a named legendary hero that can join, not lead an army, but be a
part of Rapunzel's army.
Rapunzel de Leon. Yeah. So it's similar to that. It's a bodyguard / melee combatant that will basically guard her. So which is cool. The Golden Knight. I haven't seen pictures of him yet. I wonder what he looks like. And then there's a new, berserker unit, kind of like a lightly armored chaff unit for them called the Kislevite Warriors. They are not a hybrid unit, so they are cheaper. They're melee focused. They're just get in the way, bog things down kind of unit, which is nice.
And
that faction kind of needed that because they alluded to the fact that there's a tax for Kislev units because they are all kind of hybrid. They kind of do multiple things.
A lot of them do like the High Elf Shadow Warriors where they're decent at melee and decent at range, and therefore they come at a huge price and sometimes slower recruitment. They also gave Ice Queen new mounted options.
Oh, that's right. Yep, a couple new mounts.
Yep.
That was super cool. And then Cathay got a menagerie update of just big monsters too. Yeah. Like that was pretty wild because they already had like the giant stone sentinels, and then they had like the balloons, which I guess you can call that a large thing, but can you really?
The flying trash baskets.
Yeah. And so they gave them a couple, which I think are also mounts for some of the heroes. Yep. But also they gave a legendary monster, similar to like the Shredder of Lustria, right? Which was a named, what is it called?
Dreadsaurian.
Dreadsaurian. There you go. This guy is a unique ranged version of the Stone Sentinels, who's got a giant bow. Think Bone Giants for Two Kings. And can fly around.
He cannot fly.
Can he? I thought he said he was like he had the ability to like short range fly.
He has a big jump.
Okay.
But he lands in place and it does like a Nova thing. And then he buffs all nearby constructs.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. His bow though is high damage artillery. High damage. It's best for hunting large targets. So he's an anti-large sniper.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Yeah. And then there's a new like I don't know, call it a griffin, sorta.
The Celestial Lion.
Yeah. It's like griffin without the griffin parts, right? So it's just lion with bird wings as opposed to Sphinx? I don't know.
Sphinx,
doesn't have a human face.
Like that kind of.
I don't know. Yeah. Sort of like that. And then a new like moonbird. It's like a big like vulture, like an ibis.
Yeah.
Or something. Like it's interesting looking. And then there's a new is it a magical beast? Is it just a mount?
For the Celestial Lion? I think they're...
The Celestial Lion. Is it only a mount? It's not a unit?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the Celestial General. Yep.
Gotcha. And then a new hero, it looks like. The Gate Master?
Yeah, he's a melee hero.
Okay. Because
they have like all not melee heroes. They're all like spellcasters or multipliers, and then they actually now have a melee guy.
Gotcha. So I'm like... I'm looking at it. It's like, okay, you got a name. You got a Nushabti / Bone Giant unique character. You've got a melee lord of some kind for them, which they needed. Good. It looks like the Moonbird is sort of phoenixy. It doesn't have the mount option, I don't believe, but it does have similar like Moon Phoenix or what's the Ice Phoenix? Yeah, the dark.
The Phoenix, it's the Ice Phoenix for idols.
Yeah. So it's got the ability to do like the Novas around it, below it, and then a new like Griffin mount for. Griffin equivalent mount for some of their heroes, which is cool. Tzeentch got some weird stuff. New combinations of things. We didn't have these in like physical model form.
No.
We've got Flamers of Tzeentch on discs.
Yeah, Changebringers.
Which is interesting. I didn't think they needed discs because they can already kind of fly, can't they?
They float.
These
zip around
weird, right?
quick. Okay. But they're super fragile.
But you had the chariots that already had a flamer on it. Exalted
chariot.
So, interesting. There are some Mark of Tzeentch other units now, like Centaurs, which is interesting. Yep. It's like, okay. Some bringing in some Beastmen with marks again. I'm okay with that. The Exalted Hero, which is just a melee specialist, sort of lord kind of fighter of Tzeentch, and then the normal Chaos Lord.
And he's going to be
hero,
and he's going to be for both the Tzeentch faction, which is like Kairos and the Changeling, and then also for the Warriors of Chaos, who when you're Lord, you can give them a mark and have them ascend one way or the other. You can have one become that guy.
Gotcha. Do they still get like the shields, the temporary barriers, just from having the Mark of Tzeentch?
I don't know.
In that faction? Because
it might actually be in his ability tree. but I don't know.
Because like if you recruited the
Because like the Doom Knights do.
The Doom Knights. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I wanted to know. Neat. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm excited that they rectified that and actually
it's okay to
made up for it a bit.
Well, and it's okay to then wait for the next one.
Yeah.
Because the other one was probably pretty far along in development. Because right about now, I think is when it was supposed to release. The Thrones of Decay is what it's called.
Okay. So helping out some.
It's Nurgle, Empire, and Dwarves for the 3, and it was supposed to be out about now. But when this happened and they pushed it back, that one was probably mostly developed, and now they just have to add to it to make their commitment good.
Sure.
So, I don't know how long they're going to make us wait for it, but I'm fine if they're rectifying a problem.
Yep. Plus, a game like that, it might get stale a little bit, but there's still plenty of things to go and try.
Yep.
If you've not played it all.
So many factions. There's over 100 factions to play.
Exactly. Go play something else. It's also Thursday, so it was a Heresy Day. We got a couple new siege tanks, essentially for...
Are they plastic?
I believe so. Basilisk, Medusa for the Solar Auxilia.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like a plastic kit to me.
Might be a new plastic like the other ones.
Dual kit available, larger forces, update soon. If it's a dual kit, I'm assuming it's plastic.
The detail doesn't look all chunky, so...
Yeah. I think it's a plastic
I'd have to assume, or it could be a plastic one with some resin parts. I don't know.
I guess they don't really say. Which I feel like you should... there we go. Very last sentence. Well, the second last sentence. Slap into the larger force of plastic Solar Auxilia.
Good deal.
So they are replacing that kit with a plastic one. And there's stuff inside, which I think is cool, that you'll never see if you seal it up. There's like details and ordnance racks. And
what are your thoughts on that? Because Games Workshop goes to such lengths on their vehicles and knights and stuff like that, where the internal guts are all there, even though most people just model it closed and you don't see it.
I think it's a nice touch. I don't think it requires much more effort to do, but it goes a long distance for people who want to do it. We have examples of them not going the distance recently. Knights don't have interiors of their torsos. It's hollow, even though there's a hatch on top. They could have had a cockpit or something in there. Some of the resin knights had like the ability for you to have like buy a separate bit that glued onto the inside that was the pilot.
Yeah.
Sort of like their pilot seat.
Principe guy or whatever.
Sure. But like the normal knights don't have that. And then we had the new Rogaldorn tank. The
Rogaldorn had the hollow bottom, right?
Just didn't have a bottom at all. Not even like the model wasn't sculpted on the inside. It was, if you flipped it over, it literally didn't have a bottom.
Yeah.
So like that's going the opposite direction of like not going the extra mile. That's stopping a mile short.
I wonder how those decisions get made.
Yeah. You'd assume it's like, well, we didn't have a really great way to add this extra piece in there. It would require a new sprue or something to close this off, and then which would increase the packaging cost, increase the model cost, and it's already a $115 model or whatever it is. So it's like, well, maybe we'll just leave this off.
No one will care.
No one will care because you can't see it, or if you need to, it's just rectangular. You can just put a piece of plastic card in there, which is what I would do. Is I would just close it off with just a piece of plastic. And
funny thing is, if they had included it, just a piece of plastic to just close it off, and they didn't model any of the internal bits, there probably would have been complaints that no internal bits are there, so I can't model it open like I want to.
Yep.
And then they don't include that part, and now everybody's like, what? They didn't include that. They gave us an incomplete model.
I think it'd be super cool if you did like a sort of diorama style thing with the tank where you cut it in half. And you literally like present it
blueprint style?
Sort of, but like think about like a submarine or something. And if you cut the submarine down to half and then you model the entire submarine with all the rooms inside of it being used. So you can see the deck by deck and all the the purposes and stuff, and have it be like that, like it's like you're getting a glimpse of it in use, but you're seeing into it. Yeah. I think that could be cool.
The Rogaldorn wedding cake. Here's what a slice of it looks like.
Yeah, but or like I'm thinking of like for like a competition or something. That'd be kind of cool. Or if you had like a Valkyrie. Is the Valkyrie the one that carries a tank?
I don't know.
One of the planes carries a tank. I know one of the Space Marines ones carries a Dreadnought.
Storm Raven can do that.
I'm pretty sure one of them is a tank carrier that can carry a tank along. Maybe it's a Thunderhawk. I don't remember. But if you had a plane that was carrying the tank, and you had the entire thing cut in half. Where you see like the cockpit of the plane, the tank's interior with the guys inside of it getting ready to be deployed, the hold with like the regiment, the regimental soldiers in the back getting ready to drop in, and like the gunner seat, is cut in half. And you see the guy sitting there in the gunner turret or something. Like it could be a really cool like project, just purely for display. You completely unusable because the model is literally incomplete because you cut it in half.
Yep.
Cut the side off. Details like that would be really useful, obviously, for that kind of a project.
Yeah,
and I think
you're doing less conversion when all that stuff's in there.
Yeah. So like I said, I think it goes. It's a nice touch for people who want to do it, but for most people, it will just get sealed, and it just be hidden, and it's so much less effort to do. Like it can't be much more effort to do it than they just leave it smooth on the inside. So it's like it's a nice touch.
Well, and I think as far as what they're showing us, Games Workshop that is, on their community site for these next few weeks is going to be mostly known information or confirming known details from silhouettes we've had. Like we finally got to see what that Kroot guy was.
And it is just a hero. It's not a unit. Nothing fits with it. Maybe it can join like a Kroot Hound unit or something like that, but it's probably a lone op kind of unit with synergy with the Kroot Hounds.
Well, so I'm thinking like Stilts guy for Adeptus Mechanicus or the Neurolictor for Tyranids, where it's a solo guy, not necessarily a character maybe, but
or maybe not an HQ, but it is a character.
Yeah, synergizes with nearby units. Is hard to hit because he's nearby other units. And then it looks like he's going to have a couple of different weapon options, which is cool. And they've already painted him a myriad of ways. They showed the 3 different paint schemes for that beast.
I believe the creature he's supposed to look like is a salamander. It's a very specific like salamander called an oxalotl.
Sure.
And I thought of it. I was like, I remember like a meme of like a little salamander being cute, like smiling at the camera, floating. It's like it looks like that. And then you look it up, and it's like, yep, that's exactly what it is. It looks a little bit like a mudkip. If you're familiar with Pokemon. I'm pretty sure that was based on this little salamander creature. That's what it reminds me of. Only it's 12 feet long.
And I think so. To some of us, it'll feel like it's a slow series of weeks, which it really isn't when you compare to what other companies are doing or not doing. But it's because we know that at Adepticon there will be a great big preview event that they have to save information for.
I wonder if the other silhouettes that we saw along with the Kroot character will also be showed off before Adepticon. If that's like the last couple of things we're going to see in the coming 4 weeks, and then whatever comes out for the Adepticon reveal will be not the next release window, but the one after.
Right.
I wonder if they're going to roll it that way, because
they might.
It seems like that the things they show at the conventions are not the immediately released next item. No. Right. Like they're looking like 3 to 4 months down the line.
Yeah, and it's usually pretty big reveals at those.
Yeah.
LVO didn't disappoint.
No, it did. I mean, potentially summer release window is when Adepticon is, and it is every time, right? Like and we heard about 8th edition 40k at Adepticon one year.
Yep.
We heard about 10th edition.
Every time there's a new edition.
It's Adepticon. So speaking to that, is there a new edition of a game coming out this summer? I'd be excited. Because with 40k 10th being less than a year old, it's not going to be that. Yep.
Horus Heresy 2, less than a year old, not going to be that. But it could be Age of Sigmar 4.
Well, it sure as shit ain't going to be Necromunda, because they're in the Ash Waste. That's a new season.
Yep.
Basically.
It won't be Blood Bowl. I mean, that's
Blood Bowl. They had a V2 box set not so long ago. So it won't be that either.
Titanicus just turned into Legions Imperialis, so it won't be that.
Exactly. So it's like, well, what else is there then?
Maybe
a new season of Underworlds. I mean, that's sure.
But that's always a thing. And so there's a couple options here. With their change in how they're doing the Golden Demon painting competition this year, with Adepticon still housing the first one, but now the second one's going to be in October in Germany.
It's pretty huge.
That means there's still an event in April, Warhammer Fest, at their home base in the UK, which we don't even know what's going to be there then. Mm-hmm. They might still have their own painting competition. They might do the Golden Demon qualifier thing, whatever. Mm-hmm. We know they'll still have tournaments at that, but will they still have a big preview event there? So they have to save something for that, right? You're at Warhammer World, like you gotta. So there's that to consider too. What we might not see at Adepticon could just end up right there in April.
I would say probably Adepticon would be the better place to do an edition change, especially for Age of Sigmar.
Yep.
And doing big news on 40k is better to do at their home base.
Could be.
Because, people are going to Warhammer World for Warhammer. There's nothing else there.
Right.
And so showing off your biggest game's new reveals at the thing that people are there for is probably a smarter idea. While Adepticon is still large and it is very much tabletop focused, and
it's an enormous miniatures convention.
The biggest event is still 40k.
It is.
I don't know. I feel like AOS is a smaller priority than 40k reveals. Even a new edition compared to a few new codex reveals.
Right.
It's like a smaller thing.
So there's the funny thing. So I think we've seen that most of the games are going to get touched at Adepticon's preview event. Mm-hmm. They haven't shown us much.
Did we have an actual
I don't think they've done the official.
Okay.
But we know both Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40k will be touched.
Yeah.
If we're going to speculate way early.
Yep.
40k's preview at that event, I think, might just be, here's what the next 2 codexes look like, and here's like some models or whatever they're going to be featured.
Sure.
And we already have their release window.
So we know the 4 next things.
Yeah.
Dark
Angels are out now.
I had heard an Orc player saying, well, they just skip Orcs and move on to the next thing. It's like, well, they haven't moved on to anything.
No.
There's a good chance Orcs are still next. Like,
yeah.
We don't know.
Why would they skip?
I know we saw two silhouettes coming still.
Yeah.
Which is an Orc war boss or Big Mac or something in some kind of power suit with an electric gun.
Yep.
As it works. And then we've got a Custodes guy.
Adeptes Custodes.
So we know those are coming. And then what we haven't seen of the 4 that we know are coming, we haven't seen anything for Chaos Marines.
Chaos Space Marines, yeah.
Which, if I were to go out there and say another army that might get big updates would be them. I mean, they got the whole cultist thing recently.
They did.
So maybe it will be a very small one.
And the World Leaders got their own stuff.
Yeah. And so this window of release for these 4 codexes is just going to be the Kroot. If that's going to be the largest,
it might be.
Model release.
They're doing quite a bit.
They are.
They needed it.
It's quite a bit. Side note, I'm a little irritated. Not that it's Kroot, because I love me some Kroot.
Mm-hmm.
Kroot are my, they have won me some games.
Yep.
However,
big bowl of Kroot loops.
The Kroot don't scare. that was the motto when Battle Shock was a thing where you didn't just like lose models.
Right.
Battle Shock used to be your models would like break and run away.
Yep.
And if they were in combat, they can get run down and killed as they were trying to flee, or they were routed to the point where they just left the battlefield. They weren't killed, but they just left. My Kroot would always go to ground and have a better save lying on the ground than they would standing up, and then just tank fire. And they they just wouldn't die. They wouldn't actually break. They would just lay there on an objective and just be in the way, and it would win me games. I had so many games go that way. My Kroot don't scoot, even though the bravery was awful. But I like me some Kroot. I'm glad they're getting an update. But there are so much more to the auxiliary side of Tau than Kroot they just haven't touched, right? There are humans technically in the employ of the Tau that they use pretty heavily as just shock troops. Fight.
They did a ton of conversions in 3rd Ed White Dwarfs.
Yeah, even including little cans to be their drop pods and stuff. There are the Vespids, the Vespid colonies that have models. They have rules in the game right now, and ancient models.
Ancient, crummy models.
Those could have been updated, potentially. And then there are
do you think they'll just be cut?
I think there's the Demiurge, which is a psychic race that they employ to help them navigate.
And the Demiurge have actually been in 40k fluff for a long time.
Indeed. And so there are at least those 3 other things that they could have done something with, or even evolved the Kroot into new things, right? Because generally, it's kind of a weird thing, right? Most Kroot creatures and creatures that work alongside the Kroot are just sub-races of the Kroot. The Kroot Hounds are just quadrupedal, dumber Kroot. The Krootoxes are I don't want to be gross, but it's like the Kroot wives of the rider. It's a Kroot subspecies is the Krootox. Yeah. And they didn't really go that route. Even this new guy who's riding a thing, it's not a Kroot creature. It's just a beast, right? The little salamander. It's not. I don't think it's a Kroot subspecies. They've pulled in a different creature entirely. They could have gone more into that and actually done newer units than just like resculpting. Which I mean, they needed resculpts, right? Like the new carnivores look great. The fact that there's 3 new shapers is awesome, including and then a 4th like mounted guy. Awesome.
And that's in 40k and Age of Sigmar where the solos are so important. Mm-hmm. That's kind of an easy way to expand an army to a degree. Because again, I go back to Tyranids. They did that where they're like, let's make a whole bunch of different kinds of lictors. Mm-hmm. And then they do that with these Kroot shapers. It's like, well, let's make all these ones that fulfill different roles or change how your build is going to go.
Yeah. But there was Forge World stuff too that they cut a long time ago, and just there was no replacement here for them. Like there were just cavalry, the Kroot riders. There was the Great Narlock, which is a big beastie that a crew would ride. That were really cool kits back in the day, and just.
But what are the Krootox ones that are coming?
I'm sorry, Kroot, no, Narlocks.
No.
But the Krootox they already have the Krootox with the gun. The new Berserkers are melee ones.
Yeah. Which
is cool, but it's like, it's still a Kroot riding a Krootox. Yep. This one is just wants to go punch things, not, stand around. Because they did resculpt that one too.
Yep.
There is a Krootox with just a gun on it too.
Yep.
But that's not creative. That's not new. Like the Krootox in the old edition with the rider, could still walk up and punch things at strength 7. Like it was still, pretty sure it still like punched. It just didn't look like it was an action pose. It just had a gun too.
Yep.
So, but they could have diverged and went more like way out there and pulled from other stuff, because they've showed that they're really trying to cash in on nostalgia recently. I mean, not just old world, but even like the inspiration of new models being pulled into 40k are like, let's crack it up in a 2nd or 3rd ed rulebook and find weird stuff.
And read this fluff bit.
Exactly. Like the Von Ryan's Leapers were pulled from like a 2nd ed. Mm-hmm. It was an Astra Militarum book or something that described alien subspecies and stuff. It wasn't even in a Tyranid book. No. They just described it there, and it's like, okay, we're making that unit.
Which is why they were named that way, because it was after a human.
Or like, what else did they do from nostalgia? They pulled something else in. That was like, some of the Inquisitorial Warband. They had like stuff being pulled from different places. They had the Gland Warriors, essentially, in the Inquisitor Warband that had the weird like Bowie knife on a stick and had like the javelins that were meant to kill aliens. They were professional alien hunters. That was a little blurb in an old story somewhere. So it's like, you could have pulled in some new stuff from Forge World that used to exist and doesn't exist anymore. But I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I wonder how much more they could have fit. Like, that's tough when you have a range of 20-year-old models that you have to update. Yeah. It's like, do you give them a bunch of new stuff, or do you... I mean, you got some new stuff in this, but it's like, they also fully resculpted all the old. So, I don't know. It still feels pretty new.
Yeah.
Do we know that everything we've seen is everything they're getting?
That's what they said.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, there's room for more in the future. But who knows if they might just drop a couple new kits out of nowhere. That'd be cool.
And this is the tower, or the first of the 4 releases coming, right?
Unsure. It's the only one they've shown. It could just be like they are down the line, and Orc and Custodes book comes out soon, and here's a new character for each. It could just be that, and then Tau is after that. I don't think they've given us a window. We don't have a time frame. We don't know the order yet. We're just basing it on their roadmap of what they showed. It's like Dark Angels and Orcs.
And we know that box will come before the book on its own.
Correct. Because it'll have a book in there, similar to they did with the army boxes.
And not all the Kroot are going to be in that box, because they said these other ones will be in wave 2.
Yeah. Yeah. But beyond that, we don't know what's coming next.
And so I hope for Adepticon that it's not just, well, you already knew these 2 armies were in the next 4. Here's what they are. Like,
here's a photo of the model that isn't just in shadow.
Yeah.
It's like, here it is in full 360. This is all you're getting.
Do.
I've got some hopes for at least every army getting more than just a character. I always do.
I always do too.
Because there are things for, especially Orcs, that they could really use updates for, like new flash kits or new Ludas. Like, you could go that route with them, because that part of the Orc army needs updating. Is the actual shooters, right?
Well, the flash kits are in plastic with guns that currently come on sprues with like 83 parts. I don't know how updated those would be.
But it's aesthetically it's old, right? It's still the egg carton gorilla, pose for models. The Ludas though Which one is it? Oh.
The Ludus is an older kit than the Flash kits.
You know what? I can't remember which 2 kits.
So
the Flash kits are the Pirates.
The Flash kits kit is not old, but their Lord, Badrook, has never been updated.
Yeah. So Badrook can get a new
He's
model.
old.
That'd be fine.
The Ludus kit is old.
Yeah. So the Ludus then.
That's and it was always configured poorly. And they changed it in the last edition, but it used to be they only gave you 4 of the guns and then one
mech or something,
custom mega shooter or whatever. And so you actually couldn't make the unit of 15 that you wanted. But that kit is pretty old, and it's the old gorilla build.
That's right, yeah.
Or chimp build kind of.
Gorilla.
Kind of, where the head's in the middle of the chest.
Yep. And they're J-shaped.
Yeah.
Because their back is is doing this really
super
just
arched.
Doesn't make any sense how
tiny stunty legs and like it's still that old style. Whereas the Flash kits were knobs in size and their gun kits were ridiculously complex. They were, along with the mega knobs, were slightly more recent.
Right.
But the Orks do have.
By that we mean like 7th edition.
Yeah, but the
6th edition.
But the Orks do have a lot of old, which is also, as we've griped about before, surprised us that they got the Beast Snagga thing.
Yeah.
So updating a lot of old kits is necessary, but like it surprised us with the Orks is they were another faction with a mixture of really old and new, and then instead of updating the old, they went, here's the Beast Snaggas.
Yeah.
So here's almost an entirely separate army all on its own. And
it felt a lot like this Kroot release.
Yeah.
It was like this many. It was actually more kits than the Kroot were getting.
Yeah.
Because they had the big vehicle, the kill rig, plus like the cavalry, plus they had a lot of kits released, and it was like, hey, instead of doing this, why don't you update some of the kits? And they need some love.
Yeah. And the Kroot were in a unique spot where they were just the not used part of Tau outside of when people found gimmicky utility out of guys who could whatever. So I like that they're updating the range and they're going to feature them a bit and they're going to be possibly playable. But I don't know. I feel like Orks next time around, I hope they don't just get a model. I hope some kit gets updated for them. Same with Chaos Space Marines, even though they got a big haul late in 9th.
Yeah. I don't know what it would be.
Well, they're an enormous range when you think about it. Chaos Space Marines is huge. So they've probably...
Well, they got a pretty big feature edition or two ago with the... you had the Smith, the Warp Smith character guy.
Yep.
But then do you remember they also had the Venom Crawler? They had the Lord Discordant on the Weird Beast thing.
Yeah, all the Dark Mechanic stuff.
They had that kind of stuff also release. And so it's like, oh, okay, well then Terminators is a pretty new kit. The Chosen are new. The Legionnaires are new. It's like, what else besides coming out with something new? What needs to be updated for Chaos Space Marines?
Do they still not have an independent Obliterators kit?
The Obliterators, I don't know. I know they came out with the plastic one, the 2-pack.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can get them separate. You might not be able to. That's interesting.
But that 2-pack you can get?
I don't know.
Or is it still in a box?
I don't remember.
Yeah. That's what I wonder.
That's a really good question. I honestly do not know. They got rid of the exalted Chosen. No, what are they called? Not Mutilators, but kind of Mutilators. They're the melee version of the Obliterators. What are those called?
Those were Mutilators.
Were they Mutilators?
Yeah.
Okay. They had like released some character versions of them back with the Venom crawlers and stuff, and I think they've kind of cut that unit and say, well, now you just use them as fancy looking,
possessed.
Yeah. Greater possessed.
Greater possessed.
That's what they were.
That basically replaced mutilators.
Now they're just possessed, and then mutilators are pretty much gone. But yeah, besides that though, I just don't know what else.
I don't know.
I mean, maybe a weird like no one plays a Defiler. Remember that piece of crap?
That's an old kit. That is an old kit.
Yeah, I remember back when we were playing in, I think it was AOS 1, because that kit kind of crossed over, which was always weird. It kind of crossed over. It wasn't the Defiler, it was the Soulbringer.
Soulbringer.
But it was the same kit.
Defiler legs with a demon body.
Yeah. And like, we wanted to make it work so badly, but it was so trash because his weapon profiles were 4s across the board.
Yep.
And it was expensive and it wasn't very durable.
Nope.
And it couldn't hit. But it was so funny because it was like we tried so many times. It just did not
Because every
work.
time you read its profile in Age of Sigmar, it had so many weapons, and so you figured, well, this many attacks has just got to be like a machine pun, and then you'd play it, and then it was like, well, it's really not that many attacks because this one's D3, this one's 1, this one's 2, and then they all hit on 4s, and so you just get through.
We did not have commands for like auto attack back then. No. And so you couldn't really help it hit better. And it just it was always a liability and it did nothing.
Never did anything.
Oh, it was so funny. But it was so out of place in that game.
Yeah, I didn't.
It just doesn't make any sense why it was brought over in AOS, because it's like it's clearly a mechanical thing, and like it just does not fit in what we call Slaves of Darkness now. It's the Chaos Warriors faction. Yeah. It just doesn't fit in the setting. It doesn't fit in the game. It doesn't fit in the faction. Just get it out of there.
Yeah.
If it's even still in there,
I don't think it is.
But that's a kit I feel like they could update, or even just like the Demon Engine side of things for 40k. I think there's some room for expansion, because like I know Forge Fiends and that chassis is really running amok right now.
Yep.
It's really kind of carrying a lot of Chaos Space Marine armies. But I mean, there are other things in there like we call it the Hell Turkey. The
Helldrake.
The Helldrake is an unseen, unplayed model. The Venom Crawlers really aren't seeing any play. Hell, even like the Slaughter Brutes and whatever aren't, like the Forge Fiend is the only thing that's really seen the table. Making something to synergize and make more monsters, their equivalent of monsters for the battlefield, could be, I think, a place where you can improve upon Chaos Space.
And there's a precedent for it. We're kind of all over the place today, but there's a precedent for it where, just like with Kroot, are going to have a detachment that feels like theirs, and the Vanguard Organism Tyranids have a detachment that feels like theirs. They could do the Demon Engine side of Chaos, and then have that be one of 6 or 7.
I mean, Space Marines have one that's like a Dreadnought heavy, and they've gotten 3 new variants of Dreadnought even.
Yep.
So it's like you could absolutely go that route and get Hellbrute variants, which are big hulking chaosified. Maybe not exactly that chassis of Dreadnought, the Redemptor Dreadnought chassis, or even the size, the same scale as them, but like make a new Dreadnought for Chaos Space Marines. Make the new Hellbrute with multiple options and big hulking, scary on the battlefield kind of things. Like you could absolutely go that route, and then it would give Vash to our purpose, to be able to lead those kind of things. It would create a new archetype for Chaos Space Marines where you could just go Demon Engines. That'd be cool.
And make him playable.
Yeah, absolutely. That would also be potentially a great time to release Iron Warriors.
But we don't. But we don't know because. We've heard nothing about Chaos, whereas I've seen a lot of Kroot, obviously. We've had the whispers of Ork and Custodes stuff and silhouettes of their models. Nothing for Chaos, and they're the 4th one of that.
Really strange. I also hope Custodes get a little love too with more units, because their roster is another one that's really limited. Yep. Having to rely on models pulled in from Forge World does not feel great. Nope. One of their best units is the Forge World tank, and it's just like.
Yep.
That does not feel good from a faction perspective. Like you were a player of that faction, having to rely on Forge World stuff. It's like
having to rely on lower quality but more expensive only at made-to-order rate, almost third-party models to make your army function, means the roster's not big enough.
Yep. I saw a little bit of that with Tau, too. The one remaining or two remaining things that they have from Forge World, I guess there's two versions of the Riptide, but because the Riptide has come down in points so much, and those things have not been touched, the Forge World Riptides, they are outclassed by the Riptide, which is scary to even say that. But the Tetra, the lack of shooting version of the Piranha, is apparently really kind of busted. Because when it guides a unit, it gives more rerolls than anything else in the army, which just feels bad. How long before it's just all right, Forge World, you're not allowed to create your own unique units for things. You're done.
Because they never get it right.
Because they are slowly getting to it. They cut out so much Imperial armor and it made so much of the new Horus Heresy stuff invalid for 40k.
Yep.
Besides as proxies, then it's I think it's getting to be that time. Where the 3 or 4 unit entries that other armies have, maybe it's time to cut them.
Just let go.
Just
let them
say
go.
You're done.
Yep.
And then we can actually help balance 40k better. Because again, those things don't get touched at the same rate that anything in the proper codexes get. So it's fine. I also did see folks online talking about was it a game earlier today or yesterday on Warhammer Plus where they were playing as the new Dark Angels, and the new Dark Angels army book, call it, is massively overpointed. The things in that book are, I don't want to say too many points for what they do, but too many points compared to other units in the game. This edition of 40k was supposed to be where they increase the points on everything again to make fewer models on the tabletop. But every time we get a balance pass, things that aren't performing well come down in points.
Yep.
To the point where now we're seeing Space Marines are pretty much a horde army. If you want to play foot Space Marines, you need to play a bucket of them. Because you can, because they're cheap. A tactical squad's 75 points. That's absurd. That is so cheap. It's insane. But we're seeing things like that happen, where it's okay, well, things keep coming down and down and down to make them more meta, to better win rates. But that's countering the design philosophy this edition was supposed to have, which was higher point costs, therefore fewer models on the battlefield. Well, it seems like they remembered that philosophy with the Dark Angels book, because they priced Blackwing or Deathwing Knights at 295 points for 5 Terminators. Terminators are laughably bad at 38 points.
Yep.
That they cost just... And these guys don't do much that normal Terminators do not. And it's 59 points a model.
Other than make good paint projects.
Well, yeah, but that's all they're good for right now.
Yep.
And so there was gripes about that, where it's these models at these points are just not playable. They're too many points. They're too expensive. It doesn't make any sense. Well, there was a Warhammer Plus video where they played as them, and they showed a brief army list of what they were playing in the Dark Angels, and the price of Deathwing Knights were $235 in that, not the $295 that they were listed as in the book. We were thinking that the new book would supersede the points of the General's Handbook.
Balanced Data Slate.
Yeah, that, Jesus. Why do I always mix those?
Yep.
Every time. Rend and AP, every single time.
Bravery.
Always. But it was a conflict of what was the official points, because then the new Sword Brethren guys, the really cool looking Inner Circle guys, were points that we had not seen anywhere listed at all. So it's well, maybe they're using the actual book for the points and not the balanced data slate for the points, and so they were using the wrong ones. But then the points for that unit weren't right for if they were using this one compared to this one, and so it was just this really weird guessing game of which thing we were actually using.
There could be an update coming.
And so there could be an update
after the release of the codex, yeah. Because we know that the latest digital version will always be the correct one.
Yep. And so yeah, I'm excited to see that kind of change and dig my teeth into that when that comes. But speaking of which, I think food just arrived.
It might have just arrived. We could dig our teeth into some of that.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed. Check out our new episodes every Friday on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible, or on Podbean. You You can also follow myself and Llama on Instagram for more. We are at Hyena Paints Minis and at Llama Paints Minis. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com.